Welcome back, everyone, to Advanced Block Development Tools. Regardless of what platform you're on, go ahead and hit subscribe, activate notifications, whatever you need to do to make sure you don't miss the videos coming out in this course. Today we're going to be in for a little bit of a long haul video with how to integrate Scatter. We'll look at EOS wallets in general, first of all, and then we'll do a Scatter integration for the contract we wrote in the last mini lesson where we wrote a contract really quickly, a mailing list contract where users could register and unregister for a mailing list. Well, we don't want them to have to go to EOS Studio or Kleos or Blocks or whatever in order to do that, so we're going to build a simple page, log in with Scatter, and they can click register or unregister in order to interact with the contract. So let's talk really quickly about EOS wallets. There are many EOS wallets which users use their keys, interact with dapps, and ultimately use websites like the one we're going to build. There's Scatter, the first really well-known wallet that lets you interact with dapps. Scatter lets you connect to a variety of mobile wallets, not just Token Meet One, but there's a whole list of maybe lesser-known wallets that are just really wraps for Scatter. Scatter also includes a plugin for the popular wallet EOS Links, and Scatter will let you connect to a Ledger wallet. EOS New York this year came out with Transit API, which lets you connect to all of these wallets and even enables more options that Scatter doesn't. And then Block One dropped the Universal Authenticator library, which further complicates matters. Now, while we're going to talk about some of these other wallets later, this lesson is focused on Scatter. We're going to be setting up a site with Scatter.js in vanilla JavaScript, not using Node, which is the typical way we'll do this, but for now, vanilla JavaScript. And on that site, you'll be able to log in with Scatter and view your identity or account name and push an action to an EOS smart contract. We already wrote one, and we'll be using that. We need to import EOS.js 2 and Scatter core scripts, then build our network object, which tells Scatter what kind of network we need to connect to and what endpoint to use. And then with Scatter.js Connect, we'll tell it to connect to the local desktop Scatter that the user's using. We'll use login to work with the actual blockchain accounts, and then we'll use scatter eos.transact to send our transactions to the blockchain. All right, so I've made a mailing list site folder somewhere on my drive. In fact, it's in my EEABDT folder. I'm basically keeping all of our files in one folder here. And the mailing list site project folder is currently completely empty. I'm going to want to create an index HTML file here. This is where our page will be. And let's build it out really quick. It's going to be an HTML file. Obviously, we're going to have a head where we import various scripts, and then a body. And in the body, we're going to want some buttons. Let's say a button that says begin, a button that says register, a button that says unregister, and then we'll get a log out button too. This will be implemented immediately, obviously, but we'll get it all. And then we want to maybe tell them what their current status as a Scatter user is, like whether they are not logged in, whether Scatter's not detected, their account name, whatever. So let's say your username is, and then have a nice big heading. We'll give it the ID of status so we can change it later. And it defaults to not logged in. All right. Now we need to bring in a couple of scripts here. We need to bring in Scatter.js core. Moment. We need to bring in the Scatter.js core. We need to bring in Scatter.js plugin. We're going to use EOS.js 2. And we need to bring in the EOS.js API and the JSON RPC in order to get everything working here. That's what we're going to have to bring in. You don't have to type that all out. It's just a concept. We need to go find these files. And the way to do that is going to be to go to Scatter.js, just their GitHub, download them. I'll download this repository, download the zip. Open that up. Here it is. All right, so in bundles, we've got our Scatter core and EOS.js 2 files. Those are the ones we need to drag into our folder. I don't want to keep going past myself here, so let's get rid of that. And then we also need to go into, let's go into mock sites, EOSJS2 assets. We'll pull out the API and RPC files and also plop them in. We want to put them in a folder though called assets. And I guess we'll put everything in there. All right, so we have this assets folder now. We can scripts here, say script source is, it should fill it out for us. Yep, assets, ESJI, ESJS API, and then we're just going to do that with every other file. So copy and paste, 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 assets, EOS, JS, JSON RPC, assets, scatter core, and assets for the JS plugin. Now we've already brought in all the scripts we need in order to start adding scatter to our website. Let's take a look at this first. I'm going to up the text size a little bit here. Reasonably sized buttons. There we go. All right, here it is. Here's our file. It says not logged in, and these buttons, these massive buttons I've created, do absolutely nothing right now because there's no code behind them. We've imported the scatter scripts. We've imported what we need in order to build something, but we don't have anything built yet. So let's make these buttons do something. We're going to have functions for each of these buttons. We'll call this the same thing that we called it in the contract. All right. And now below those buttons, let's add a script tag. So inside here, we'll go everything scatter does on the page. First, we're going to have scatter. We're going to set up our scatter network. Then we're going to, it's actually scatterjs.network. Then we're going to run scatterjs.connect. And we'll perpetually update that status ID thing up above. So we'll set up our RPC and API, and then we will create the actual functions here. So here we go. First, key line here for EOS, scatterjs.plugins. New scatter EOS. All right, so we're setting up scatter EOS, and the first thing we have to do is define a network, right? We have no idea otherwise what network we're trying to connect to. It could be any EOS IO network. So what we use is network from JSON, and then we put a JavaScript object in here that's going to get read as a JSON with a blockchain item, a blockchain key, a chain ID key, a host key, a port key, and a protocol key. And we were running our local network in EOS Studio, which I don't think I have set up. So let's go back and turn on the local network. All right, local network's running. Accounts look good. Contract is up. I stopped it accidentally. Let's start it again. All right, so the local network runs at localhost, and the port by default is 8888. The protocol is HTTP. If you're on mainnet, this will probably be and port 43, and the host will be whatever API you're using, and chain ID will be a very specific ID for mainnet. For our purposes, we need a chain ID from our local net. I'm going to terminal here and use Kleos to get info. Right, because Kleos right now it can access that node EOS that's running in EOS Studio. It's exposed to Kleos. So I actually want to get info. And here's an ID right here of my local node EOS. Yours should be exactly the same. I'm going to copy that out and paste it right in here. And the blockchain is EOS. I kind of went in reverse order there, but now our network object is forming up, and we should be able to run scatterjs.connect. This will just connect to your scatter desktop that's running on your desktop. So make sure that you have Scatter Desktop installed. If you don't scatter.com and download Scatter Desktop, make sure you're all good. Then you need to head over and open Scatter Desktop. Yep, it crashed it. So whenever one of those like super user security warnings comes up, do you want to allow through the firewall or whatever? It was my video software. So in Scatter, you need to actually add local network. Head down to networks here, and you see there's a bunch of networks. Some of them are turned on, some of them are not because I never use them. You want to add a custom network, and here type in those very same details. You want to type in the chain ID. You can call this whatever you want, local, test, EOS, network, or something, and your HTTP and the correct port, and then the chain ID is that same chain ID from here, CF057, whatever. Paste that in, and then hit Save New Network. Okay, that'll create a new local test network. Now you're going to also need to import the private key from the public-private key pair in EOS Studio. So if you used EOS Studio to create this mailing list for account, then go up to Manage Key Pairs, and you can hit Show Private Keys, copy out your private key from that you're managing in EOS Studio, because you'll need that in order to have Scatter sign transactions on behalf of the mailing list. All right, if you know what I'm talking about, then you in order to actually walk through this tutorial, you do need to have the contract running that we wrote in the last lesson. I have the files for download. You spin it up in EOS Studio, create an account in EOS Studio, and whatever the private key is for that account, import it as a key to Scatter. And as long as you have that local network set up, Scatter will recognize automatically that key pair has authority to sign for an account on the local test network, and it'll import it, all right? So, back to Scatter.js Connect, we're going to call our application mailing list, and then we need to tell it that we want this network, all right? So the two parameters for connect are the name of the organization you're connecting. We'll see this name when the little Scatter window pops up that says, do you want to? It'll have this name, and then the actual network object that we created up here. Once that's done, then we want to pass our connected status and function here. All right. Now, if that didn't actually work, all right, if we're not connected, then we want to return a console error that says no Scatter. All right, we failed to connect to Scatter. Otherwise, we're going to continue to log in. And after that, we'll take the ID, the identity we get, and pass it into another arrow function. And if there's no ID at all, I'll also throw an error that says no identity. Okay. Really can't type on camera. All right, and that'll just log us in as soon as we hop on the page. Now let's do this perpetually update. First, we do want to set the status. If you remember that up here in our HTML, we have a status ID heading. We want to go ahead and set that. So let's create a status variable. Let's just so that we don't have to keep typing this. We'll grab that document element and stash it in a constant called status. And if there's no Scatter.js whatsoever, then we will make the inner text of status say no Scatter. That'll just change text of that heading, the inner text, which is this text. Change it from not logged in to no Scatter. If that's not if there is a Scatter.js but there's no identity, we're kind of doing the same thing we did up above, but in a different way. There's several ways to do everything with Scatter. So if you're looking for examples, you'll find multiple ways, and that's complicated by the fact that some of the examples you'll find are for the old EOS.js version 16, or it's also referred to as 1. And the most recent examples are for the new EOS.JS version 20, which is also EOS.JS 2, which, as you have seen, we're using here. So there are some differences. Make sure you're using up-to-date examples, but these are some of the ways you can do it with EOS.JS 20. No identity. We want to display if there is scatter but no identity. And otherwise, actually display the identity name in that heading. All right, so in the scatter.js object, we have an identity, and we're going to display that name. And I want to actually call this setStatus function immediately. But since scatter might take a while to connect, and we're not dealing with some asynchronous stuff here, let's go ahead and set an interval, as dirty as this might seem. And in yet another arrow function, we will set status, and then that'll run at intervals. Okay, so I set an interval to just run status recurring. Let's see if that has the intended effect. Here I am, refresh the page. Hey, wow, it immediately connected me because I've already connected before. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. All right, so let's refresh the page. And hey, there it worked. It pulled up scatter, and it asks me which key I want to use. I'm going to use an active key. I don't know why there's doubles here, but all right, so I'm using mailing list 4, which is the account that I have imported with this key on the local test network. I will allow it to link, and it says your username is my first identity. That's the name of my scatter identity. Scatter has this identity system, but maybe you wanted to actually display the account name here, the EOS account name. That's kind of more traditional. It's what's done on more sites. In that case, all we have to do is come in that identity, grab the first account and display its name instead. All right, I'll save that. Now we see EOS account name. Okay, so you can support either one. Let's make a logout function now. I know that we have our RPC API. We'll do that in a little bit. I'm going to make a window function, logout, arrows, which kind of get really old. I should be better at typing them than I am. We'll just tell scatter.js to log out. That's it, right? So I'm going to save that and make sure that worked out. It worked. No identity because I'm logged out now. All right, so it should be a trivial matter to also do login in the same way. Scatter.js.login, save. All right, it logs in on page load, which we've already done, right? We can get rid of that later if we want. Okay, so I log out and I log in. Yep, log out, log in. Great, we've implemented login and log out. We are cruising along here. Now we just have 2 more functions to implement. Register user and unregister user. Of course, these are going to be more complicated because we have to pass some information to the blockchain. We haven't done any of that yet. We've been log scatter ID, but we haven't done anything related to the EOS blockchain itself. But let's keep these functions equally simple because they do basically the same thing. I don't want to repeat a huge amount of code in each function. We'll create a new function that we'll just call transact right now, and we'll pass in the action name into that function. All right, so obviously this function doesn't currently exist, transact. I'm going to write it now. All right, so we're sending the action name into this transact function. And what we need to do here is make sure we're logged in. Then we'll do the same protections we had up here, where we throw an error if there's no identity. Because we can't do anything on the blockchain if we don't have scatter connected, if there's no identity connected. We're going to grab scatter.js, we're going to grab the account from scatter, EOS account with the identity, and throw it in a constant here so that we can access it easily. We're going to do a couple of things first that I do want to keep available outside. They'll only do might have other functions in the future. So we need to be able to do a remote procedure call, and EOS.js allows us to do that. So we're going to use the default JS RPC and it takes network.full host as something you gotta know, you know, or something you gotta look up, rather, not something different necessarily. All right, then we can create our actual API. We do that by calling scatterj.eos, and the parameters are network and the EOS.js default API and the RPC we just created. That should do it. All right, that should be enough for RPC API. I'm going to reload the page. Okay, we're good. This is actually pretty normal stuff when you're developing locally, so we can ignore that. Now we actually need to take we have this transact function that we're passing action to, log in. We've got our RPC and our API. After logging in, we do want our API to transact. API.transact. And then after it transacts, we want to log the results. All right, we'll log the response results, and if it throws an error, we want to catch the error. So we're all set up to build our transaction in here. All we have to do is give it an actions object. That's it. And within the actions object, we can roll actions, in fact, but we're just going to pass. We tell it an account first. Of the contract, the user account. So we have our contract running on mailing list 4 here. I'm also going to be using it to register, but name whatever, but the contract account name will go here. And then the actual action, again, we pass in up here. We'll go next, and then we have to send an authorization. Now, the idea wouldn't have to, is because there can be multiple authorizers, especially with the new EOS updates. In fact, the user paying for resources must go first. If you do have multiple authorizations and you're paying for things for your users, that's paying first. But all we act on that's account and permission we select in, so the object of that scatter account. All right. Now something is wrong here. Oh yeah, this is obviously this needs to be in curly braces too. Okay. Now, we're not actually sending in any data right now, though. We do need to also send in data. A to-do would be to pass in a data object here, along with an action object, for more flexibility in this transact function. But since we're only doing one kind of action right now, we're just passing in username regardless of which action we're doing. We'll just put that in right here. The username, again, in our contract, in our smart contract, we need a username variable to begin whether we're registering or unregistering a user. So we'll pass in the username here. All right, and let's give it a go. All right, so we just did what you're not supposed to do. We built kind of the whole thing, not in pieces. Let's make sure our login and login still work. They do. Now I'm going to go over to my contract table viewer in EOS Studio. There's nothing in the table. If I were to register with a user would in that table. I'm going to unregister that user, no longer in the table. If all register, should register me. No fear. We can open script and look past typical unpromised action. List not present. Unpromised action is near. Oh, I can't have this. Hang on. All right. Yeah, I didn't need that. Okay, so now it should work. Let's go over. Looks good, logs out, logs in, just back up, and table is just full table. So just that trend, and we're right full. Okay, and it look you find and it was and that's a mailing list collection form. That's a quick scatter integration, and that's what you need to know in order to use scatter. There are some other features, we'll be covering them in future lessons, but this is enough to do any scatter action, any action on the user. You know, again, how to document that does say don't this, and just you had, but they like manageable. With that, the example for you now, your app will net, and a little about deployment layer, Kylan, and even to mainnet. But for that, you'll have to for another video. Welcome back, everyone, to its blockchain development tools. What platform you're on, go ahead, subscribe, activate notifications, whatever you need to do to make sure you don't miss the videos coming out in this course. Today we're going to be in for a little bit of a long haul video. We're going to be learning how to integrate scatter. We'll look at EOS wallets in general, first of all, and then we'll do a scatter integration for the contract we wrote in the last mini lesson, where we wrote a contract really quickly, a mailing list contract where users could register and unregister for a mailing list. Well, we don't want them to have to go to EOS Studio